They say some people are born beneath lucky stars. I wasn't one of them. I came into this world during a thunderstorm that split the sky open and silenced the wolves that used to howl on the edge of our village. My mother said even the moon hid its face that night, as if afraid to look at me. Maybe that was just one of her stories, but as I grew older, I began to believe it. There was something about me that made people turn away, not cruelly, just as if they forgot I existed the moment I left their sight. Our village was small, tucked between restless forests and the silver curve of a lake. Life here was simple. Fields in the morning, prayers at dusk, and long winters when we depended on stories to keep warm. My mother was the healer. People came to her for remedies, for protection charms, for whispered words to ease a dying breath. But when the fever came, a sickness that took half the children in one season, they turned on her. They said she'd angered the spirits, that her herbs had cooled the darkness instead of curing it. I still remember the way she stood in the doorway that night, candlelight trembling in her hand, as the villagers shouted from beyond the gate. Her eyes were steady, but her lips trembled when she whispered, "Don't ever let them harden your heart, Lyra." She died a month later, not from sickness, but from sorrow. Since then, I lived alone in that same small house by the lake, a place too quiet for comfort, too full of echoes for peace. My days were a routine stitched together by habit. I would wake before dawn, tend to the herbs my mother left behind, and watch the mist rise over the water. Then I'd walk into town, where people would nod politely, the way one acknowledges an empty chair. It didn't bother me as much as it used to. There's a strange comfort in being invisible. You learn to listen to the world more closely. The way the wind sighs through the trees, or how the crows gather before a storm, as if they know something you don't. That morning, the air was heavy and still, like the forest was holding its breath. The sky hung low, grey and soft, and the scent of rain clung to everything. I pulled on my wool cloak and walked down the narrow path toward the lake, the hem brushing through the wet grass. The water was calm, a perfect mirror of the clouds above. I liked it best like this, when the lake seemed to swallow sound, when the world felt paused between one heartbeat and the next. I knelt near the edge and dipped my fingers into the water. It was colder than it should have been for late autumn. I watched the ripples spread outward, bending the reflection of my face into something almost unfamiliar. "You look like her," a voice had told me once. A stranger passing through, speaking of my mother. "But your eyes are older, sadder." I had laughed it off then, but as I stared at my reflection now, I saw what he meant. My eyes looked like they carried too many winters, too many unspoken questions. Behind me, the wind stirred the trees, a soft rustle like a sigh. The forest had always felt alive, but lately it was different, more aware. Sometimes at night, I could swear I heard whispering just beyond the tree line. The words were too faint to understand, but they always came when I was closest to sleep, like a lullaby meant for someone else. I used to think it was grief playing tricks on me. But then there was the light. It began 3 nights ago. I had been sitting by the lake when I saw it, a faint silver glow beneath the surface, moving slowly like a heartbeat pulsing underwater. I told myself it was the reflection of a lantern from the village, but the next night it returned, and there were no lanterns burning then. Tonight, it was brighter. Even now, in the pale daylight, I could see the shimmer lingering deep below, faint but constant. I leaned closer, my breath fogging the air. The water rippled slightly, though there was no wind. Something about it made the hairs on my arms rise. Not fear, exactly, but recognition, like a forgotten melody stirring at the edge of memory. When I was a child, my mother had told me stories about the lake, about an ancient kingdom that once stood beneath its waters. A place where the moon would descend each century to kiss its reflection and wake the sleeping souls below. I never believed her, but as I watched the shimmer deepen into a soft pulse, I felt a shiver that wasn't entirely from the cold. I reached out again, letting my fingertips brush the surface. The light flared, sudden, sharp, and alive. I gasped and stumbled backward, heart pounding. The glow faded almost instantly, leaving only the calm, unbroken water behind. "Just your imagination," I whispered. But my voice didn't sound convinced. I stayed there for a long time, staring into the stillness. The longer I looked, the stranger it felt, as if something on the other side of that reflection was staring back. And then, faintly, I heard it. A sound so soft it could have been mistaken for the wind. A deep, low hum, like the echo of a distant bell. It vibrated through the ground, through the soles of my feet, into my bones. It lasted only a few seconds before fading away completely. The world was silent again, but the silence felt heavier than before. I stood slowly, brushing the dirt from my hands, and glanced around. The forest looked the same, calm, indifferent, but something inside me knew the world had shifted in some small, invisible way. Like a thread had been pulled from the fabric of my quiet life, unraveling what I thought I knew. As I turned to leave, a single drop of water fell onto my hand. It wasn't raining. The sky was dry. I looked down. A ripple spread across the lake, gentle, deliberate, as if something beneath had moved. The hum returned for the briefest moment, softer this time, almost calling. I took one step closer, unable to resist. The water stilled again, revealing my reflection. Only this time, it wasn't alone. Behind my mirrored face, faint and shifting like smoke, was the outline of a man. Broad shoulders, dark hair, eyes that glowed faintly like silver embers. My breath caught. I blinked, and he was gone. The ripples faded. The forest held its breath, and I was left standing there, heart racing, the sound of my pulse matching the quiet rhythm of the lake. Somewhere deep inside, I knew my life would never be the same again. The next morning, I woke before sunrise to the sound of something tapping against my window. For a moment, I thought it was just the branches brushing against the glass. The forest often liked to whisper that way. But when I sat up, the tapping stopped, replaced by the slow, steady rhythm of my own heartbeat. The air felt different, thicker, charged with something I couldn't name. The kind of quiet that comes before a storm, only there were no clouds in sight. The world outside my window was painted in shades of soft grey and silver, the last traces of mist curling off the lake. I tried to shake off the unease. I made tea, fed the fire, and stepped outside to gather herbs from the garden. Just like every morning, the ground was damp beneath my boots, and the scent of pine and earth filled the air. Everything looked the same, yet nothing felt the same. As I reached for a handful of sage, my wrist throbbed suddenly, a faint ache pulsing beneath the skin. I rolled up my sleeve and frowned. There was a faint crescent mark there, so pale it could have been a trick of the light. I brushed my thumb over it. The skin tingled, warm and alive. It disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. I told myself I was imagining it. Lack of sleep, maybe. Or the strange dream I'd had, though dream didn't feel like the right word for it. It had been too real. In the dream, I was standing at the edge of the lake, moonlight shimmering across the surface like glass. The same silver glow pulsed deep beneath the water. And then I heard it again. The hum. Only this time it spoke. "Why do you cry, mortal?" I had turned toward the sound, but before I could see who it was, I woke up, the echo of that voice still trembling in my chest. It wasn't just a dream. I could still feel it. That low vibration, like a heartbeat not my own. The villagers were busy preparing for the harvest blessing that day, stringing garlands of dried flowers along the fences and sweeping the square clean. When I passed by with my basket, a few nodded politely, but most looked through me as usual. Except for one. Old Mara, the candle maker, stopped mid-step when she saw me. Her wrinkled hand tightened around her walking stick, and her eyes flickered to my wrist. "You've been near the lake again, haven't you?" I hesitated. "Why?" Her gaze darkened. "That water doesn't forget, child. And it doesn't forgive." Before I could ask what she meant, she turned and walked away, muttering prayers under her breath. Her words followed me all the way home. That evening, I couldn't resist. The lake had always been a quiet companion to me, a place to think, to breathe, to escape the weight of being unwanted. But now it called to me in a way that was impossible to ignore. The sun had just dipped below the trees when I arrived. The air shimmered faintly, golden light catching on the ripples of the water. I sat at the same spot as the night before, hugging my knees against the chill. For a while, nothing happened. Just the slow rhythm of the waves against the shore, the soft rustle of leaves. I let my thoughts drift, to my mother, to the life I'd built out of her absence, to the feeling that something in the world had shifted without asking my permission. Then, the water stirred. A soft ripple spread outward from the center of the lake. My breath caught. It wasn't the wind. The air was still. The ripple moved again, deliberate this time, like a hand brushing against the surface from beneath. "Who's there?" I whispered. No answer. Just the faint echo of the same hum I'd heard before. So low, I almost doubted it was real. I leaned closer, the cool air brushing against my cheek. The reflection staring back at me wavered, then changed. For a heartbeat, I saw the outline again. A man's face, barely visible beneath the water's surface. His features were strong but soft, his eyes closed as if he were asleep. And yet, I could feel him watching me. I stumbled back, the hem of my dress catching on a stone. My pulse raced. When I looked again, he was gone, just the still reflection of the sky. I told myself to go home, but my body wouldn't listen. Something about that face, that quiet sadness, rooted me to the spot. And then I heard it again. Not the hum this time. A whisper. So faint I thought the wind was teasing me. "Don't be afraid." The words brushed against my ear like a sigh. I turned sharply, scanning the trees, but there was no one there. Only the stillness of dusk settling around me. My hands were trembling. My heart felt like it didn't know whether to be afraid or alive. "I'm dreaming," I said softly, as if saying it out loud would make it true. But the air didn't agree. The silence pressed closer, listening. The lake shimmered once more. A single droplet of water lifted from the surface, just one, and floated toward me. I froze, watching as it hovered in front of my face for the briefest moment before touching my cheek. It was warm. The warmth spread across my skin and down my neck, pooling in my chest. And with it came a memory that wasn't mine. A flicker of moonlight, a tall figure standing in a hall of silver stone, a voice whispering, "You promised." I gasped and stumbled back again, the vision vanishing as quickly as it came. My knees hit the ground, and I stayed there shaking, trying to catch my breath. The water was calm once more, as if nothing had happened. But something had. I could feel it in my blood, a pulse that didn't belong to me. Something ancient and aching, pressing against the edge of understanding. I stayed until the stars came out, watching the moon rise above the tree line. Its reflection rippled gently across the lake, and for a heartbeat I saw him again. Clearer this time. His eyes were open now, bright as silver fire. I didn't run. I couldn't. Because beneath the fear, there was something else. A strange sense of recognition, like meeting someone I had loved in another life. He looked right at me, and though his lips didn't move, I heard his voice again, low and sorrowful. Soon, the reflection shattered. The wind rose, scattering the surface into 1,000 broken stars. And it was over. The forest fell silent again, as if the world had inhaled and forgotten to exhale. I stood slowly, my hands still trembling. The moon hung low above the trees, watching. The mark on my wrist pulsed once, faintly, like a second heartbeat. That was the night I stopped pretending my life was ordinary. Something was waiting for me beneath that water. Something ancient, bound and impossibly familiar. And though I didn't understand it yet, a part of me already knew. Whatever it was, it had been waiting for me. I didn't return to the lake for 2 days. I told myself it was foolish to even think about what I'd seen. The voice, the shimmer, the reflection of someone who couldn't possibly exist. But no matter how I tried to push it away, the memory refused to fade. It lingered like the echo of a melody I couldn't stop humming. Every sound seemed to remind me of it. The rustle of wind through the leaves, the hum of water under the bridge, even the quiet moments before I fell asleep. I would close my eyes and see that faint silver glow, pulsing beneath the surface, waiting, and I would hear his voice again. That single word that still haunted me. Soon, by the 3rd evening, the pull was too strong to ignore. I wrapped myself in my cloak and followed the narrow path through the woods, each step sinking softly into the damp earth. The world was wrapped in twilight, colors muted, as if everything was holding its breath. Even the birds had gone silent. When I reached the edge of the lake, the water was perfectly still, the surface mirroring the dusky sky. For a long moment I just stood there, listening to the quiet, feeling the cold seep through my boots. It wasn't fear that gripped me this time. It was something closer to longing, though I couldn't explain why. "I'm here again," I whispered, my breath misting in the air. "If you're real, please let me understand." The ripples began almost immediately, faint circles spreading outward from the center. The glow appeared again, that soft, silvery pulse beneath the water. Brighter now, steadier. My heartbeat quickened in rhythm with it. Then the voice came. Low, calm, and impossibly close. "I told you not to be afraid." I spun around, but no one stood behind me. The voice wasn't coming from the trees. It was coming from the lake itself. From within it, my throat tightened. "Who are you?" There was a pause, long enough that I thought I'd imagined it again. But then the water rippled once more, and a faint shape began to rise beneath the surface, not breaking through, but hovering just below, like a reflection made of light and memory. "You would not remember me," the voice said softly. "Not yet." His tone carried a strange sadness, something heavy and ancient, as though he had spoken that line too many times before. I crouched near the edge, drawn forward without realizing it. The glow beneath the water shifted, forming the faint outline of a figure. Tall, graceful, almost human. I couldn't see his face clearly, only the shimmer of eyes that seemed to hold the reflection of the moon itself. "Are you a spirit?" I asked quietly. "A prisoner," he replied. "Of time. Of my own mistakes." The wind stirred, sending ripples across the water, blurring his form. I reached out instinctively, as if the movement alone could steady him. My fingertips stopped just above the surface, trembling. "You shouldn't be here," he said suddenly, voice rougher now. "The curse was not meant to touch your kind." "My kind?" I echoed. He hesitated. The living. A shiver ran through me. Not from fear, not exactly. It was the strange certainty that he wasn't lying. There was something about his presence that felt impossibly real. The air around me hummed faintly, alive with a quiet energy that set my skin tingling. "I saw you before," I whispered. "In the reflection. You said soon." "What did you mean?" The light beneath the lake flickered, as if he'd exhaled a sigh through the water. "The bond has already begun." "Bond?" His voice softened, almost regretful. "Your tears reached me. They carry something stronger than magic. Sorrow untainted by greed. It called to what's left of me." I shook my head, trying to make sense of his words. "You make it sound as if I woke me," he finished for me. Yes. The night deepened around us. The moon rose higher, spilling silver across the lake. The light beneath the surface brightened in response. As though it were breathing, I should have felt afraid. But I didn't. There was something in the way he spoke. A quiet reverence. A gentleness that made the edges of my loneliness soften. For the first time in years, something was truly speaking to me, not past me. "Why were you cursed?" I asked. His form wavered, the glow dimming slightly. When he spoke, his voice was lower, threaded with pain. "Because I loved what I was forbidden to love." The air stilled completely. Even the lake seemed to stop moving. I didn't press him for more. The way he said it was enough. Heavy, resigned, full of memories too deep to share. "Will you tell me your name?" I asked instead. He hesitated again. And then, softly, like a prayer carried on wind, he said, "Edric." The name felt ancient on my tongue when I repeated it. Edric. The moment I spoke it, the glow beneath the water surged. A faint warmth spread through the mark on my wrist, the crescent shape pulsing faintly like a heartbeat answering another. He noticed. "It has begun," he whispered. "What has?" "The link between us. It cannot be undone now." My heart thudded. "I don't understand." "You will," he said. "But you must be careful. The queen who bound me will not let you free me easily. She will see you as she saw me, a threat." The forest around us shivered as if stirred by invisible hands. The glow beneath the lake flickered, and for a second, I thought I saw chains, faint, ghostly, coiling around his form like liquid silver. "Time grows thin," he murmured. "She will sense this soon. What can I do?" "Remember me," he said simply. "That is all that keeps me from fading." The light dimmed slowly, and his outline began to dissolve. Panic rose in my chest. "Wait, please. When will I see you again?" His voice reached me one last time, distant but clear. "When the moon bleeds silver across your window." And then he was gone. The lake returned to stillness, the glow fading until all that remained was my reflection. Pale, breathless and trembling. For a long time, I just sat there, listening to the wind return to the trees. My thoughts spun in circles. None of it made sense, and yet every word felt true in a way I couldn't deny. When I finally rose to leave, I looked back one last time. The moonlight danced gently across the water, and for a heartbeat, I swore I saw a shadow move beneath the surface. Slow, graceful, and watching something inside me shifted then, quiet but sure, like a door unlocking after years of silence. Edric, the cursed king, the prisoner of the lake. And somehow, I knew that whatever tied us together had only just begun to awaken. The next few days felt both familiar and foreign, as if my life had slipped slightly out of alignment. Everything around me still looked the same, the quiet village wrapped in morning fog, the gentle hum of bees drifting over the lavender fields. But something beneath it all had shifted. It was in the air I breathed, in the silence between sounds, in the weight of my own heartbeat. Since that night in the forest, since I'd met him, the world no longer felt solid. It felt as though I were walking through a dream that refused to end. I tried to return to my old rhythm. Morning tea by the window, work at the bookstore, polite smiles to passing neighbors who barely remembered my name. Yet even as I rang up books and dusted shelves, I kept expecting him to appear, maybe through the door, or outside by the streetlight where the shadows never reached. My mind replayed that night over and over. His voice like a whisper from centuries past. His eyes that seemed to hold storms within them. And the way the forest had gone utterly still around us. As if time itself had paused to listen. Sleep offered no escape. Every night, dreams pulled me somewhere deeper. Sometimes I found myself standing by a blackened throne beneath an endless moon. Other nights, I walked through an ancient hall filled with flickering torches, my bare feet echoing against marble floors that didn't belong to this world. A voice always called my name, but softly, like a memory half buried under snow. When I woke, I could still feel the chill of stone beneath my fingertips. I told myself it was nothing, just exhaustion, imagination, a wandering mind caught between loneliness and longing. But deep down, I knew something had begun to unravel inside me. Every day felt heavier, as if invisible threads tied me to something unseen. Sometimes, when I brushed my fingers across old pages at the shop, I'd hear faint whispers between the lines, ancient languages I shouldn't understand, yet somehow did. Once, while shelving a book about forgotten kingdoms, the candle beside me flickered violently before going out. And when I looked up, the faint scent of pine and rain filled the air, the same scent that clung to him. People began to notice. I wasn't quite myself. Mrs. Halley from the bakery asked if I'd been getting enough rest. "You look like you've seen a ghost, dear," she said with a half smile. I laughed it off, though the word ghost lingered longer than it should have. Maybe she was closer to the truth than either of us knew. By the third night, I couldn't bear staying indoors. The air felt too tight, too still. I walked to the edge of the forest again, where the moonlight turned the mist silver, and the wind hummed through the trees like a low, ancient song. I waited, though I didn't know for what. And when nothing came, I whispered his name, though I still wasn't sure I'd heard it right that night. The forest answered with silence. Then, just as I turned to leave, a soft gust brushed my hair, and the world dimmed around me. For a moment, I could have sworn I heard footsteps, slow and deliberate, circling just beyond the light. I froze, heart pounding, the air electric with something alive. But when I called out again, the sound dissolved into the night. Back in my cottage, I found something that wasn't there before. On my windowsill lay a single black feather. It shimmered faintly under the candlelight, catching shades of silver and blue, though no bird in our valley bore wings like that. I touched it, and warmth surged through my fingertips, familiar warmth, like the air between us that night in the woods. I pressed the feather to my heart and closed my eyes, and for the briefest instant, I felt a pulse that wasn't my own beat in sync with mine. The following morning, the sky turned strange. Clouds rolled in before dawn, thick and motionless. The sun rose weakly, its light scattered and pale. The village went quiet, no birds, no wind. I stood outside, clutching my shawl, and felt the world holding its breath. Something was coming. I could feel it in my bones. At the shop, I tried to distract myself with work, but my hands trembled. When I looked up at the old mirror hanging near the counter, I saw movement behind me, dark, fleeting, like a shadow crossing the room. I turned quickly, but the aisles were empty. My reflection lingered a half-second longer than it should have. That's when I knew this wasn't just imagination anymore. Whatever had followed me from the forest wasn't gone. It was here, watching, waiting. That night, the dreams came harder. I was back in the great hall again, this time with candles lit in a perfect circle around me. At the center stood him. His expression was sorrow itself, regal and broken. "You called me," he said softly. His voice was both near and far, like thunder echoing through water. "And now I cannot stay away." I reached for him, desperate to understand. But as our fingers neared, the candles went out, and I woke gasping, my pillow wet with tears I didn't remember crying. The black feather was still on my nightstand, pulsing faintly with light. The next morning, the villagers whispered of strange winds near the forest, of animals fleeing and lights seen dancing in the fog. I tried to ignore it, but my heart knew the truth. The world I thought I knew was shifting, stretching at its seams. And as dusk fell that evening, I saw him again, standing at the edge of the trees, just beyond the fading light, watching me, waiting, my breath caught as our eyes met across the distance. I didn't run. I couldn't. Because deep inside, something whispered that I had known him long before that night, and that whatever had begun between us was far from over. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of the darkness, because it was calling me by name. The next time I saw him, the world seemed to hold its breath. The mist hung low, curling around his figure like smoke, and the faint moonlight caught in his eyes, those same eyes that had haunted my dreams. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us wasn't empty. It pulsed with something alive, something that hummed through the air like a quiet promise. "I thought you were only a dream," I finally whispered. My voice trembled, though I didn't know if it was from fear or relief. He took a slow step closer, the leaves crunching beneath his boots. "And yet," he murmured, "you called me back. Even in your waking hours I could feel it." His tone carried both wonder and sorrow, as though my presence brought him comfort and pain all at once. I wanted to look away, to break the spell his voice cast, but my heart wouldn't let me. "Who are you?" I asked. "What are you?" He hesitated, eyes dropping for a brief moment. "Someone who was once human," he said softly, "and someone who has waited far too long for something I thought I'd never find again." The way he said it filled me with a strange ache, like recognizing a song I'd loved long before I could remember hearing it. I should have been afraid alone, in the forest at night with a man who didn't belong to this world, but I wasn't. His presence felt like the missing part of a story my soul had been telling in. Fragments. We walked together beneath the trees, the mist swirling around us. Our words came slowly, hesitantly, as if both of us were afraid to break the fragile peace forming between us. I told him about my quiet life, the bookstore, the empty cottage, the loneliness that settled in every corner of my days. He listened with a stillness that felt sacred, his gaze never drifting away from mine. "And you?" I asked gently. "Where do you go when you disappear?" He smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. "To a place that exists between worlds," he said. "Neither living nor gone. I'm bound to the forest and the shadows of what once was." A shiver ran through me, though not from the cold. Bound? By what? His expression grew distant, the faint glow of moonlight tracing the sharp lines of his face. "A curse," he said after a pause, "cast long ago by those I once called my own. My freedom was taken, my name erased. Only something pure could unbind me, something I'd lost faith in long ago." I didn't speak. The forest seemed to hush in reverence around us. There was a truth between us that words couldn't touch, a fragile understanding, unspoken but deeply felt. When the wind shifted, I noticed how close he stood. His nearness wasn't intimidating, it was grounding, as though the space between us hummed with warmth that the night itself couldn't steal. He reached out, slowly, as if asking silent permission. His fingers brushed the back of my hand, and the world seemed to still. It wasn't just touch, it was recognition. A pulse of light beneath the skin. A whisper that wasn't sound but memory. For a heartbeat, I saw flashes in my mind. A crown made of silver branches. A battlefield under blood-red skies. A woman's tears falling onto stone. And then, his hand dropped away, and the images vanished like mist. What was that? I breathed. He looked at me with something almost like fear. The bond, he whispered. It's waking. We stood there, caught between awe and confusion. The night grew colder, but the air around us stayed warm, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. He turned his gaze toward the trees, as though he could hear something I couldn't. You shouldn't have found me, he said quietly. The world doesn't allow such things anymore. Not between what I am and what you are. Then why did you come to me? I asked, stepping closer. My voice trembled with both courage and desperation. Why now? His jaw tightened, his eyes darkened. Because you cried, he said, voice barely above a whisper. And your tears. They called me back from the void. I didn't understand the meaning behind his words, but I felt the truth of them deep within my chest. My tears, the ones I had shed in loneliness, grief, and longing, had reached something ancient and broken. Somehow, without knowing, I had touched a wound older than time. We lingered in silence, and I found myself watching the way the faint light bent around him, as if even the moonlight recognized who he was. I felt a strange mixture of peace and sorrow, a sense that something beautiful and dangerous was beginning to bloom. When it was time to leave, I turned toward the path. But before I could take a step, he spoke again. You shouldn't return here after dusk, he said, voice heavy with warning. There are others who roam the forest, those who do not wish to see me freed. Then they'll have to face me too, I said softly, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. For the first time, I saw him smile, a real one, faint but full of quiet wonder. You have no idea who you are, do you? He murmured. Before I could respond, the wind rose sharply, swirling leaves into the air. The forest seemed to tremble, as if it disapproved of what had just passed between us. He looked up, eyes narrowing, then back at me with urgency. Go, he said. Now. I hesitated, heart pounding, but something in his voice told me to listen. I turned and ran toward the village, feeling his gaze on me until the trees swallowed him from sight. When I reached the edge of the clearing, I looked back one last time and gasped. The place where he had stood was empty, but the black feather lay once again at my feet, glowing faintly with silver light. I bent down to pick it up, and as I did, I heard his voice in the windsoft, almost tender. Don't be afraid of what you feel. It's only the beginning. I pressed the feather to my heart, and this time, instead of fear, I felt warmth spreading through me, quiet, steady, and impossibly real. For the first time in years, I didn't feel forgotten. I felt chosen. And somewhere deep within, I knew that whatever bound us together was waking, and nothing in this world, or the next, would ever be the same again. The days that followed blurred into quiet unease. The black feather lay on my knitstand like a piece of the forest itself, shimmering faintly under the candlelight, no matter how many times I tried to hide it. I couldn't stop thinking about him, about the way his words lingered in the air, the sadness in his eyes, that strange warmth that pulsed through my chest every time I remembered his voice. Something deep inside me knew I wasn't just caught in someone else's story. Somehow I was part of it. Sleep no longer offered rest. My dreams had turned into fragments of something ancient. I walked through corridors lined with stone carvings that glowed faintly when I passed, each one depicting a crowned figure holding a black feather. Sometimes I saw myself reflected in their eyes, older, stronger, and cloaked in silver light. And always, at the end of the dream, I heard his voice, You are the key, Elara. You always were. That name Elara echoed in my mind long after I woke. It wasn't mine, and yet it felt familiar, like a melody I'd forgotten the words to. I began to wonder if it had ever been my name before. That evening, as dusk stretched across the sky, I found myself walking toward the forest again. I didn't decide to go, it felt as though something within me had already chosen. The path was cloaked in mist, the air humming softly, the way it does before a storm. And there, waiting by the old willow tree, he stood. He looked different this time, weary, as if burdened by something heavier than time. Yet when his eyes met mine, the air seemed to still. You came back, he said quietly. I had to, I answered. You said I called you. I need to know why. For a long moment he simply looked at me. Then he sighed, the sound carrying centuries of sorrow. Because, he began, you are the last echo of a promise I failed to keep. His words sent a chill through me. I stepped closer. What promise? He hesitated, then reached out his hand. Come. There's something you must see. I hesitated only a moment before taking his hand. The instant our fingers touched, the forest shifted. The world melted away, and I was no longer standing among trees. Instead, I stood in a vast hall of silver and shadow. Enormous pillars rose around us, carved with runes that glowed faintly blue. Moonlight poured through broken windows, illuminating a throne, at the far end dark as obsidian. Its surface cracked and cold. This, he said, his voice low and distant, was once my home. I turned to him, stunned. You were a king? He gave a faint, humorless smile. Long ago, I ruled over those who walked both day and night, creatures of light and shadow, bound by one law, balance. But pride, it has a way of breaking even the noblest hearts. His eyes grew distant as he continued, and the air grew colder with his words. I fell in love with someone forbidden, a mortal womankind, brave, and unlike any soul of my realm. She saw the man beneath the crown. Her love was my salvation, and my undoing. My chest tightened as I listened, the images painting themselves vividly in my mind. A young king standing beside a woman who shouldn't have existed in his world, both defying the laws written by those before them. When the council discovered our bond, he said, voice barely above a whisper, they cursed us. She was stripped of her memories, sent into the mortal world to live a life untouched by what she had known. And his voice faltered. I was bound to the shadows, forced to wander between realms, waiting until her soul remembered mine. A hush fell between us. My breath caught as the truth began to take shape in my mind. You're saying she was reborn? He nodded slowly, his gaze heavy on me. Every few centuries, her spirit returns, never remembering who she was, never remembering me. Until now, I felt the world tilt. You think I'm her? He didn't answer immediately. He simply stepped closer, his eyes filled with something I couldn't name. I don't think, he said softly. I know. The hall around us pulsed faintly, as though it too recognized the truth. My heart raced, my hands trembling. It couldn't be possible. I was just ordinary, a forgotten woman in a quiet village. And yet, as I stood there in that impossible place, I could feel the memory of another life pressing at the edges of my mind, flashes of laughter beneath moonlight. A hand slipping into mine, a promise whispered against the sound of the sea. Tears stung my eyes before I could stop them. Why me? I whispered. Why bring me back only to remember what I can't have? His expression broke then, all strength and stoicism falling away. Because the curse can only be broken when your heart remembers mine. Not your mind, not your body, but your soul. The hall began to tremble, shadows deepening around us. He turned sharply, his posture suddenly tense. "They found us," he said under his breath. "Who?" "The ones who bound me here." His eyes darkened, the faint glow beneath his skin flickering like dying fire. "They can feel your awakening. And if they reach you before your memory returns." He didn't finish. He didn't have to. I could feel the danger rising like a storm tide. The light began to fracture around us, the air splitting with whispers that weren't words, but warnings. I clung to his arm as the hall dissolved, the world pulling itself apart until we stood once more in the forest. Breathless and shaken. The night was alive with sound, now the trees rustling though no wind moved them, faint figures shifting in the fog. He stepped in front of me, his stance protective, his voice low. "You must stay hidden," he said, "until your heart remembers everything. Until then, they'll come for you." Before I could speak, the forest grew darker unnaturally so. A voice, low and echoing, drifted through the mist. "You broke the law again, Myron." The air froze. Myron, his name. The one I had never known until now. He turned toward the sound, eyes blazing faintly with silver. "You will not touch her." A shape began to form in the fog, a tall, cloaked figure, its presence cold enough to sting the air. "The mortal does not belong to you," it said. Before I could see its face, Myron's hand shot toward me. "Run," he commanded. But before I could move, the forest shattered with light. For an instant, I saw both of them clearly, two ancient beings, bound by time and betrayal, and then the light consumed everything. When it faded, I was alone. The forest was silent once more, the feather gone from my hand. But where it had been, my palm now glowed faintly with silver light marking me. And in that moment, I understood one terrifying truth. I hadn't just found the cursed king. I had been the reason for his curse all along. The world didn't feel real anymore. It pulsed, shifted, trembled as if the seams between what was true and what was hidden had finally begun to tear. Every shadow in the village felt alive. Every whisper of wind carried words I couldn't quite understand. And every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, Myron, fading further into darkness. The mark on my palm still glowed faintly, a soft silver light that wouldn't fade no matter how hard I tried to hide it. At night, it burned brighter, like it had a heartbeat of its own. When I covered it, I could feel it hum beneath my skin, reminding me that the ordinary world I once knew was slipping away. I stopped sleeping properly. Every time I drifted off, I woke in places I didn't remember, walking to the edge of the forest, the empty crossroads, once even beside the old well that hadn't been used in years. Sometimes I saw shapes in the mist, tall, gliding forms with silver eyes that vanished the moment I looked directly at them. The barrier between the realms was thinning, and somehow it was tied to me. The villagers began to notice. They whispered when I passed, their eyes following the faint shimmer of light that seemed to cling to me. I caught my reflection in the shop mirror one afternoon and barely recognized myself. My hair, once a plain chestnut, had begun to carry a soft sheen, like moonlight brushing through it. My eyes looked brighter, too sharp, almost not human. The part of me that was ordinary was fading, but none of it mattered compared to the silence. Myron hadn't returned. Since that blinding flash in the forest, I hadn't seen him, not even in dreams. The nights felt colder without his presence. Every instinct in me wanted to find him, but every rational thought screamed that doing so would destroy whatever fragile balance still existed between our worlds. The air itself began to betray the calm. Animals fled the forest. The trees leaned unnaturally, their branches twisting as if alive. Even the river that ran beside the village shimmered under the moon, reflecting constellations I didn't recognize. The world wasn't breaking, it was waking. One evening, as I walked home beneath the gathering storm clouds, I heard a voice, not Myron's, but something older, colder. You shouldn't have remembered. I spun around. No one was there, but I could feel the speaker. The air thickened, pressing against my chest. Who are you? I whispered. The one he defied. The one who still keeps the balance. A chill swept through me. The mist coiled tighter. What do you want? To remind you, the voice hissed, that mortal hearts cannot hold eternal bonds. Every time you return, the world bleeds for it. I took a step back, my breath sharp. Then why bring me back at all? A pause. Then, almost softly, because the curse demands it. His punishment lives only as long as your heart still remembers his name. Lightning split the sky. When I looked again, the mist was gone, but the meaning of those words clung to me like ice. If Myron's curse depended on my soul remembering him, then my awakening wasn't salvation, it was suffering. For both of us. That night, I sat by the window as rain lashed the glass, thinking of what I'd seen in the Hall of Shadows. Of his voice, his sorrow. My heart pulled toward him, but logic whispered that love had brought nothing but ruin before. Still, love has never listened to logic. Before dawn, I went to the forest. The rain had stopped, but the air shimmered faintly, silver motes drifting through the darkness. The mark on my palm pulsed with each step, guiding me towards something unseen. I called his name once. Then again, silence. Then, from deep within the trees, I heard a faint cry low, broken, and unmistakably his. My chest tightened. Myron! I ran toward the sound, branches tearing at my sleeves. The path curved into a clearing I'd never seen before, a circle of stones glowing faintly beneath the moon. And there he was. He was kneeling in the center, surrounded by lines of light etched into the ground runes burning with crimson fire. His face was pale, his body trembling. When he lifted his head, his eyes locked onto mine, and in them I saw both relief and fear. You shouldn't have come, he rasped. I couldn't stay away. The runes flared brighter, pulsing angrily at my voice. I took a step closer, but he raised his hand weakly. No, Alara, it's not safe. They bound me again. Every time you draw near, the curse feeds. It grows stronger. Tears pricked my eyes. Then let me help you. We can break it together. He gave a faint, tragic smile. You still believe in together, even after everything. The air around us vibrated. The symbols etched into the ground began to twist, their light snaking toward me. I stumbled back as they circled my feet, wrapping around my ankles like chains made of fire. Myron's eyes widened. No! He tried to move, but the spell held him down. Myron, what's happening? I cried. They're trying to seal you again, he said. They think if you forget me, the curse will die. But it won't, I whispered. It'll just keep repeating, won't it? He nodded slowly, pain flickering across his face. It always does. The light flared violently, forcing me to shield my eyes. Through the brightness, I heard him shouting my name, begging me to remember who I truly was. And in that blinding light, fragments of memory broke free his crown, his voice. A promise whispered over the sound of waves. Then darkness fell. The ground stopped shaking. The light dimmed. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying in my bed. The candle on my nightstand still burned low, and the black feather rested beside it. For a moment I wondered if I dreamed it all. But when I looked at my hands, the mark on my palm had spread lines of silver tracing up my wrist, glowing faintly beneath the skin. The world outside was silent again. Too silent. Even the wind refused to move. And then, just as I began to think, I was alone. His voice echoed faintly in my mind. They're coming for you, Alara. You have to choose now, love or life. You can't have both. The candle flickered, then went out. I sat there in the dark, clutching the feather to my chest, heart pounding with the weight of that choice. The air around me shimmered once more, faintly humming with power. And I knew whatever world I had lived in before was gone. The real battle hadn't even begun. The morning after the forest tremor, the air in my cottage felt heavier. The silver light beneath my skin pulsed faintly, almost as if it were breathing. I couldn't stop thinking about Myron's words. Love or life. You can't have both. I traced the mark on my wrist again, trying to make sense of it, to ground myself in some fragment of ordinary reality, but there was none left. The ordinary world I had once known was gone, replaced by something that both terrified and drew me forward. I decided to go back to the lake. The water, calm beneath the dawn sky, mirrored the pale sunlight as if nothing had shifted overnight. And yet, I could feel it, the subtle pulse of magic, the faint rhythm that matched the heartbeat in my palm. Something was waiting there, and I knew it was meant for me. Myron? I called softly, though I already knew the answer. The wind stirred, but no figure emerged. Then a ripple broke the surface. Not the normal ripples of water, but deliberate, purposeful. A shape began to rise, shimmering faintly like glass in the sun. My pulse quickened. This time, I didn't hesitate. When he stepped fully from the water's edge, he looked different. Not weaker, not fading, but lighter, almost as if the bond between us had begun to shift the weight of centuries. His eyes met mine, and there was something new there. Trust. Recognition. A truth that had been buried beneath endless years of sorrow. Alara, he said, his voice softer than I had ever heard. Do you remember anything? I shook my head, though fragments lingered. Memories I couldn't place. Laughter beneath starlight, a crown I never wore in this life, a promise whispered when the world was young. I think so, I murmured. Bits and pieces, but it's like trying to catch sunlight in my hands. He stepped closer, and I felt the warmth radiate from him, pulling at my chest. You've always been the key, he said, not just to freeing me, but to understanding yourself. You carry more than you know. I swallowed hard. More than I know? What do you mean? He lifted his hand slowly, tracing a faint line along the silver mark on my wrist. That bond we share, it's older than the curse, older than the forest, older than the world as you know it. You are not just the mortal who returned. You are my counterpart, my equal. Everything that kept me bound is tied to you, and everything that will free me depends on the strength of your heart. I stepped back, shaking. Why me? I'm ordinary. Forgotten. No one has ever cared for me the way you talk about. His eyes softened, almost painfully so. Because you are not ordinary, Alara. You were never meant to be forgotten. You were placed in the world for this very purpose, because only someone pure and unwavering could awaken what the curse has hidden for centuries. Your tears brought me here. Yes, but it's your heart that will unbind me. And your memories, they will guide us both. I sank to the ground beside the lake, overwhelmed. I don't even know who I am anymore. I'm scared, Myron. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. He knelt beside me, his presence steadying, almost like an anchor in the storm. It's okay to be scared, he said. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward despite it. You've been afraid all your life, hidden in shadows, thinking you were unworthy. But every act of kindness, every tear shed for the world, has been a step toward this moment. Your heart has never been ordinary. It has always been extraordinary. And it is stronger than anyone or anything you've ever faced. I wanted to believe him, but doubt still clung to me like winter frost. But the curse, the danger, if I try and fail, what happens to you? Myron took my hand in both of his, pressing it against his chest. Then we fail together, he whispered. But the truth is, I've waited centuries for someone like you to find me. Someone brave enough to face what I cannot alone. And now you have. Tears came unbidden. I didn't try to stop them. I'm scared, I said again, voice cracking. I don't know if I can. You already can, he said firmly. You are doing it. Every step you take toward me, every heartbeat that remembers, every fragment of memory that returns. Those are victories. You may not see them yet, but they are yours, and I will be with you every moment. I wanted to reach out, to let him fill the emptiness inside me. But the silver mark on my wrist pulsed violently. It flared, sending a wave of warmth and something else through me. A whisper, almost like my own voice, but not quite, echoed in my mind. Remember everything, I gasped. Memories flooded in suddenly. The first time I had met him, not in this life, but the one before. The laughter beneath the moon. The hands we had held. Promises spoken when kingdoms fell. The warmth of his heart. The solemn oath he had made to protect me. And the heartbreak of losing me to the mortal world. I stumbled backward, clutching my head. I remember. Myron's eyes widened. Relief, hope, and fear mingled together in a glance I will never forget. You do? I nodded, voice trembling. Every piece. I see it all. And I feel it. All of it. The love, the fear, the waiting. It's mine too. A faint smile curved his lips, and for a moment, centuries of sorrow fell away. Then we can begin, he said. I looked down at the mark on my wrist. The silver lines had spread, glowing brighter than ever before. It wasn't just a mark, it was a map, a signal of power, a link between us that no curse could sever. But just as the joy began to fill me, a shadow passed over the lake. A cold wind swept through the trees, carrying a voice that made my blood run cold. You remember, but the price is not yet paid, it hissed. I froze. Myron's expression darkened, and I could see it in his eyes. The danger wasn't gone. The awakening of memory had brought power, and with power came an enemy we had yet to face. He took my hand again, squeezing tightly. Whatever comes, we face it together. You are stronger than you know. And I am not leaving your side again. I nodded, though fear still gripped me. My heart knew the truth now. My life, my love, and my destiny were irrevocably tied to him. But the challenge before us was greater than either of us had imagined. And in that moment, I understood the final, terrifying truth. Remembering everything had changed us forever, but it had also awakened something far older, far darker, lurking just beyond the silver mist of the lake. The storm was coming. The days after my memories returned were both exhilarating and terrifying. Every corner of the forest seemed alive. Every shadow whispered secrets, and every rustle of leaves could be a warning. The silver mark on my wrist pulsed constantly, reminding me that the world I had once known was gone forever. Myron and I moved through it together, yet even the closeness I had longed for could not erase the uncertainty that weighed on us like a storm cloud dot at first. We trained ourselves to sense the forest, to listen to its hum, and to anticipate the shadows that lurked at its edge. Myron guided me patiently, his hands steady on mine, showing me how to draw the power that surged beneath my skin. But the more I tapped into it, the more I realized how unstable everything had become. The silver lines on my arms shimmered with energy, but with each pulse, I felt echoes of fear and doubt ripple through me. One evening, the mist settled low across the valley, and I felt it before I saw it, an unnatural presence that carried weight, cold and suffocating. Myron stiffened beside me. "They're here," he said, voice tense. "The ones who bound me centuries ago. And now, they're drawn to you." My heart thumped violently. "Why me?" I whispered. "I've only just remembered." "Because remembering makes you powerful," he said, jaw tight. "And power always draws attention." We moved silently through the forest, shadows pressing in from every direction. I clutched his hand, drawing strength from his presence, but even that felt fragile. The silver mark on my wrist glowed brighter, almost unbearably, warning me of danger I could not yet see. Then the first shadow moved. It slid across the ground, twisting like smoke, before solidifying into a figure that was both human and something else. Its eyes were cold, silver, and unfeeling. My breath caught. "You shouldn't have returned," it hissed, voice like ice on stone. "Your heart belongs to him, but your existence defies the order." Myron stepped forward, his posture protective. "She is mine. You will not touch her." The shadow laughed, low and hollow. "Myron, you cannot protect her." "Not anymore. The more she remembers, the more dangerous she becomes. And yet, I will not let you have her." I wanted to run, to hide, but my instincts rooted me to the spot. The power thrumming beneath my skin flared in response to the threat, and I realized something terrifying. I could fight, but I had no control over the depth of what I could summon. Myron sensed it too, his eyes narrowing. "Focus," he commanded, voice sharp. "Control it, Alara. Do not let fear guide you." I tried, but the moment the shadow lunged forward, my emotions surged: first fear, love, anger, all mixed together into a force I had never experienced. Light burst from my arm, illuminating the trees, but the power was chaotic, wild. The shadow recoiled, hissing, then disappeared into the mist, leaving only the echo of its laughter behind. I collapsed to my knees, trembling. Myron knelt beside me immediately, hands on my shoulders. "Are you all right?" he asked. "I think so," I whispered. "But I don't know what I did." "You've awakened more than memories," he said softly. "You've awakened something old and dangerous. And now, they'll come for you again. Stronger, smarter, relentless." A chill ran down my spine. I wanted to feel fear, but there was also a strange exhilaration. I had power. Yes, but it was unpredictable, and every moment made me realize how fragile our bond could be. Days passed. The forest grew restless, animals fleeing deeper into the shadows. Myron tried to teach me to channel the power calmly, to focus it with intention. But each time I tried, the mark burned, searing into my skin. And each time, I felt something pull at my soul, an unseen weight that threatened to separate us even as it bound us together. One night, as we rested near the lake, I felt it, a deep, unshakable unease. Myron looked at me, concern etched across his face. "What is it?" I don't know," I admitted. "It's like the forest itself is warning me. Something is coming that we can't fight." He pulled me close, pressing my head to his chest. "Then we prepare. Together. Always." But even as he spoke, doubt crept in. I realized, with a sinking feeling, that no matter how strong our bond, no matter how deep my love, there were forces at work beyond our control. My heart wanted to fight, but my mind whispered that love alone might not be enough. The following morning, I woke to find him gone. The cottage was empty. The mist clung to the windows like a living thing. Panic rose instantly in my chest. I ran to the forest, calling his name, every instinct screaming that something was wrong. When I reached the edge of the old willow tree clearing, I saw the runes glowing faintly on the ground. Myron's magic, active even in his absence. And then I saw it. A black feather lying in the center of the circle, glowing faintly with silver light. A voice, low and unfamiliar, echoed from the trees. She cannot save him. Neither of you will survive what comes next. I froze, tears pricking my eyes. Myron had left me. Or worse, he had been taken. My mind raced with questions and fear. But the silver mark burned bright, reminding me that I was not powerless. I fell to my knees, clutching the feather, heart aching with the first real taste of loss. I realized that love, no matter how deep, could not shield us from the cost of destiny. That night, the world felt heavier, darker, and the forest closed in around me, pressing with unseen threats. And in the shadows, I could sense it, the enemy watching, waiting, testing the bond that had once seemed unbreakable. Myron's absence made the danger real, immediate. I had a choice to make: stay and face the unknown alone, or flee and risk losing him forever. My hands shook as I stared at the feather, knowing that whatever path I chose, nothing would ever be the same. My heart screamed to follow him, to reach him, to protect him. My mind whispered caution, logic, and survival. And for the first time, I understood the truth of Myron's warning. Love and destiny were not always allies. Sometimes they were the greatest tests of all. The night pressed closer, colder, the forest alive with anticipation. And I knew, with a certainty that made my chest ache, that tomorrow would change everything. The forest had grown silent, but the silence was heavy, almost suffocating. Every tree, every shadow, seemed to hold its breath, waiting. I moved slowly, the black feather clutched tightly in my hand, the silver mark on my wrist pulsing like a heartbeat in the dark. I could feel it, the danger, closer than ever, pressing against the edges of my mind. Every instinct screamed to turn back, but I knew I couldn't. Not now. Not when Myron was out there somewhere, his fate tied to mine. The runes ahead glowed faintly under the moonlight, circling the clearing like a trap. I recognized them from the last encounter, the magic that bound him, that had terrified me before. My chest tightened as I stepped forward. The silver light from my mark flared, reacting to the runes, and I realized something crucial. It wasn't just a mark. It was a key. "Myron," I called softly, my voice trembling. "I'm coming." "Hold on." The wind shifted instantly, and I felt it, the presence of something vast, powerful, and impossibly old. A shadow moved at the edge of the clearing, taller than any human, its shape ever shifting, cloaked in black mist. The voice that followed was like ice sliding over stone. "You cannot defy what was set in motion centuries ago," it hissed. "She belongs to the fate that binds you both." I swallowed, forcing my fear down. "I don't belong to fate," I shouted. "I belong to my own heart." The shadow laughed, a sound that made the hair on my arms rise. "Your heart cannot undo what has been written. He is mine to keep, and you cannot stop it." I stepped forward, raising the black feather in my hand. Its silver glow burst forth, washing the clearing in light. The mark on my wrist flared, sending heat through my veins, and I realized with sudden clarity. My memories, my emotions, my love, they were the power the shadow feared. It was not Myron alone who had been bound. It was the bond itself, the undeniable connection between two souls destined for each other, that threatened to break its hold. Then I saw him. Myron knelt at the center of the runes, his hands pressed against the ground, eyes closed. The shadow's tendrils snaked around him, faintly burning the air like frost. His breathing was shallow. My heart twisted. Myron! I ran forward, the silver light pulsing stronger, almost responding to my fear and desperation. The shadow hissed and recoiled slightly, as if aware of the force rising from me. "Stay back," it warned, voice echoing across the clearing. "You cannot save him without losing yourself." "I don't care," I yelled. "I will not lose him." The air around me vibrated. The runes on the ground glowed red-hot, writhing like living creatures. My hand trembled as I pressed the feather toward the center, the light bursting forth in waves. I felt something shift deep within me, a surge of memory, love, and determination combining into something I had never felt before. The shadow shrieked, recoiling from the brightness, but it struck out with tendrils of darkness toward me. I flinched, but the power surged from the bond itself, wrapping around me like armor. Myron's eyes opened, glowing faintly silver, and he lifted his head, reaching toward me. "Alara," he whispered, voice strained but filled with hope. "I'm here," I called. "Hold on." I let the silver light from the feather and the mark flow together, the energy between us resonating, weaving into the runes and dissolving them one by one. The shadow writhed, shrieking, trying to resist, but the power of memory, love and courage was stronger. Myron rose to his knees, the darkness around him cracking and splintering. But the shadow was not finished. It lashed out, striking at both of us. I screamed, the force of it pushing me backward. Myron caught me instantly, pulling me to safety, and for a moment, we held each other tightly, breathless, hearts hammering in sync. "You're stronger than I ever imagined," he murmured. "That this isn't over. We can't let our guard down, not for a second." I nodded, tears streaming, the silver light dimming as the shadow retreated into the mist. "I won't," I promised. "I'll do whatever it takes." But the air shifted again, colder, heavier, and I realized with a sinking feeling that the retreat was temporary. The shadow had not been destroyed, it had been delayed. It would return, and next time it would be prepared. Myron's hand brushed mine, warmth flooding through me. "Whatever comes," he said, voice low and steady, "we face it together." I wanted to believe him, but doubt still lingered. What if the next encounter was the one we couldn't survive? What if the bond, the very thing that gave us strength, became the reason for our downfall? The wind rose suddenly, swirling around us, carrying whispers of unseen threats and unfinished curses. I pressed the feather to my chest, feeling the hum of power and memory. Somewhere deep in my soul, I knew the true challenge was not the shadow. It was the choice we would soon have to make. And then, without warning, the ground beneath us trembled violently. A voice low, familiar, and full of sorrow echoed across the clearing. "Lara, do not forget me." I turned to see Myron, face pale, eyes wide with shock. A dark figure loomed behind him, taller than any shadow I had seen, its form obscured by the mist, but radiating an unstoppable force. My heart stuttered. "We're too late," Myron whispered, his hand gripping mine. This is unlike anything we've faced before." The shadow stretched upward, impossibly tall, tendrils of black wrapping around the clearing like living night. Its voice, full of menace and hunger, spoke again. "You cannot protect her. And now, she belongs to me." The silver mark burned brighter than ever, light flaring from the feather in my hand. Myron tightened his hold. I took a deep breath, every memory of us, every fragment of love and courage flooding through me. I stepped forward, facing the shadow with trembling certainty. But even as I did, I realized the truth. This confrontation was only the beginning. The shadow was stronger than any force we had known. The stakes were higher than ever. And the choices we would make in the coming hours would decide not just our lives, but the fate of every bond like ours. The forest trembled around us, the night alive with power and threat. And for a moment, the world held its breath watching, waiting for what would happen next. The clearing was alive with tension, charged with a power older than the forest itself. Shadows twisted unnaturally, and the mist hung thick like smoke, masking the edges of the world. Myron and I stood side by side, our hands entwined, hearts hammering in unison. The silver mark on my wrist glowed fiercely, lighting the darkness with a warmth that defied the creeping cold. The shadow loomed ahead, vast and unyielding, tendrils of darkness writhing like living night. Its voice, low and resonant, filled every corner of the clearing. "You cannot escape your fate," it hissed, "and neither of you will survive what comes next." I swallowed hard, my chest tight with fear. Yet there was a fire in me now, a clarity that had been born of love, memory, and the countless small moments that had shaped me long before I even remembered. I took a step forward. The feather clutched tightly in my hand, its silver glow flaring with every heartbeat. "We are not afraid," I said, voice trembling but firm. "And we will not let you dictate our lives." The shadow recoiled slightly, a ripple of surprise passing through its immense form. Myron's hand tightened on mine, grounding me, reminding me that we were not alone in this. "Elara," he said softly, "you are the key. Trust yourself. Trust us. Trust the bond we share." I nodded, letting the words anchor me. Memories flooded in every stolen moment, every promise whispered beneath starlight, every tear and every triumph. And with them came power. Not a cold, dangerous magic, but something alive, something woven from love itself. The silver mark burned brightly, the feather thrumming with energy, and I realized I could feel the bond between us resonate outward, reaching into the very roots of the forest. The shadow shrieked, sensing the surge, and lashed out with tendrils of darkness. I flinched but held firm, raising the feather. Light erupted from it, weaving into the darkness like threads of silver fire. The tendrils recoiled, screeching in fury. The shadow struck again, more desperate, more relentless. Myron moved beside me, his own energy intertwining with mine, reinforcing the bond. "We can do this," he whispered. "Together." "Together," I echoed, my voice steadier now, filled with conviction. I took a deep breath, letting every memory, every emotion, every fragment of love pour through me. The silver light intensified, surrounding us in a cocoon of warmth and strength. The shadow hissed, rearing back, but the light was stronger than it had ever been, born of something it could never touch. The undeniable connection of two souls who refused to be torn apart. The battle was not physical, it was emotional, spiritual. Every tendril of darkness tested our hearts, our courage, our willingness to sacrifice. Each surge of power I unleashed left me drained but unbroken, my bond with Myron growing stronger with every pulse of silver light. And through it all, I realized something profound. This was not just about survival. It was about proving that love could endure beyond curses, beyond fear, beyond the manipulation of forces older than time. The shadow shrieked in frustration, its form flickering. You are not allowed. This bond cannot exist." I stepped closer to Myron, letting our foreheads touch. "It can," I said, voice soft but unwavering. "Because it does. And it always will. No curse, no shadow, no fate can take it from us." With that, I let the silver light from the feather flow fully into the bond, into the forest, into every corner where darkness had taken hold. The runes on the ground flared, responding to the pure energy of love and memory. The shadow shrieked one last time, writhing violently, before it began to unravel. Tendrils dissolving into mist, its voice fading into silence. For a heartbeat, everything was still. The air was calm, the mist clearing, and the moonlight bathed the clearing in soft silver light. Myron and I collapsed to our knees, exhausted, yet holding on to each other as if we would never let go. I can't believe it, I whispered, tears streaming freely. It's over. Myron's hands cupped my face, his thumb brushing a tear from my cheek. Not entirely, he said softly. The world will always test us, Ilara, but we survived. And we survived together. I realized then that the shadow had not only been an enemy, it had been a test of our trust, our courage, and the depth of the bond that had withstood centuries. And in overcoming it, we had transformed, not just as individuals, but as a pair, united in ways the mortal world could never understand. But the victory came at a cost. The energy we had poured into the bond left me weak, the mark on my wrist fading slowly, the silver light dimming to a gentle glow. Myron leaned against me, and I felt the ache of both relief and exhaustion. We did it, I murmured. Yes, he said, voice low, but there is still one choice left. I looked at him, confusion mixing with fear. Choice? He nodded. The bond freed us, but the final step. It demands sacrifice. One of us must remain tethered to the forest, to guard this magic, until the balance is fully restored. If we both leave, the darkness could return. My chest tightened. My love for him battled with the need for freedom, with the desire to live an ordinary life together. Myron saw the conflict in my eyes, his own sorrow mirroring mine. Do you trust me? He asked, voice trembling. Even if it means we're apart. I began, tears spilling freely. I trust you. Always. He cut my face again, pressing his forehead to mine. Then we do what must be done. The silver light swirled around us one last time, enveloping him in a soft glow. I felt the warmth of his hand lingering on mine, even as his form began to shimmer, blending with the forest. He smiled at me, a gentle, heartbreaking smile, before the light drew him upward, until he was no longer beside me, but bound to the heart of the forest, guarding its magic. I sank to my knees, feeling both the ache of loss and the weight of love that had survived centuries. My heart ached, but it was alive, strong and full. I whispered into the wind, I'll find you again, Myron, no matter what. And the forest answered softly, gently. A single black feather drifted into my hands, glowing faintly with silver light. A promise, a connection, a bond that neither time, nor shadow, nor fate could break. I rose, trembling but determined, knowing that life would never be ordinary again. But I had learned the truth. Love endures beyond fear, beyond loss, beyond every test. And in its endurance it transforms us, strengthens us, and makes us whole. The wind stirred, carrying the faintest echo of his voice. Always, Ilara, always. And with that, I stepped forward, into a world forever changed, knowing that the final chapter, the return, the reunion, the fulfillment of centuries of longing was still to come. The forest had returned to its quiet rhythm, though the air still hummed faintly with lingering magic. The silver light in my wrist mark had faded to a soft, steady glow, no longer wild and uncontrollable, but calm, like a heartbeat at rest. Each breath I drew felt heavier with gratitude and lighter with the freedom that came after the storm. The bond with Myron, though stretched across the distance of the forest, was no less alive. It pulsed within me, a reminder that love endures even when bodies are apart. For weeks, I wandered the paths we had once walked together, revisiting the lake where our memories had resurfaced and the glade where the shadow had tested us. Each step reminded me of the choices we had made, the courage I had summoned, the trust we had shared, and the sacrifices that had shaped us. And though the ache of separation pressed against my heart, I carried the knowledge that what we had could never be broken, only tempered. One morning, as the first hints of dawn brushed the horizon, I felt the silver warmth stir on my wrist. Myron's presence, not in body, not in sight, but in essence alive in the rhythm of the forest, in the rustle of leaves, in the whisper of the wind. I closed my eyes, letting the moment wash over me, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I smiled without hesitation. I spoke softly, as if he could hear me. I miss you, but I know you're safe, and I know we'll find our way back to each other. The words felt powerful, almost like a spell, and somewhere deep in the forest I imagined his voice responding, calm and certain. Always, Alara. Always. Days passed, and with each one, I found new strength in myself. I tended to the forest, restoring what had been scarred by the shadow's presence. Birds returned, the trees seemed greener, and the sunlight danced through the canopy with a warmth that felt like hope incarnate. Myron had become a part of this renewal, not as a physical companion, but as a silent guardian whose spirit intertwined with mine. The realization settled gently in my chest. Love did not require constant presence. It thrived in trust, memory, and the unspoken promise of return. I often sat by the lake, watching the reflection of the sky ripple with the wind. Memories of him, of our laughter and our trials, played across my mind, a cinematic reel of emotion and connection. And yet, there was no sadness that lingered, only a deep resonant peace. The shadow that had once threatened to tear everything apart had vanished, dissolved not by anger or violence, but by the enduring power of love, courage, and trust. One evening, as twilight settled across the forest, I noticed something floating atop the water. A single black feather, tipped with silver, drifting gently toward me. My heart leapt. I reached out and caught it, feeling warmth surge through my fingers, a tangible reminder that he was near, watching, waiting. The feather was more than a token, it was a promise, a bridge between us, a symbol of all we had endured and all that remained to come. Clutching the feather to my chest, I whispered into the evening air, "I will wait, Myron, for as long as it takes, and I will live fully knowing you are part of me." Always. The wind seemed to respond, brushing my hair gently, carrying a sensation of comfort that made the forest feel alive and protective. Days turned into weeks, and the rhythm of life resumed its gentle course. The ordinary world, once so small and confining, now felt vast and rich, filled with magic both seen and unseen. I found joy in the little things, sunlight on leaves, the song of birds, the quiet rustle of the forest at night. Yet every joy was tempered by the quiet presence of Myron's spirit, reminding me that our story was still unfolding, still alive. Then one morning, as the first rays of the sun pierced the horizon, the forest shimmered with silver light. I felt a pull in my chest, a warmth that was undeniably him. My heart raced, and I turned toward the source instinctively. There, standing across the glade bathed in golden sunrise, was Myron. His form solid, real, the silver glow fading, but his presence unmistakable. He smiled at me, a smile that held centuries of longing, sorrow, and finally, reunion. I ran toward him, tears of joy streaming down my face, and he met me halfway, arms open, steady, and unwavering. We embraced, and for a long moment, The world ceased to exist beyond the rhythm of our shared heartbeat. Every trial, every tear, every shadow we had faced felt distant, replaced by the radiant certainty of our love. "I never stopped believing," he whispered, brushing my hair from my face. "And I never will. You are my heart, Alara, in every world, in every life. And you are mine," I replied, voice breaking, yet full of strength. "Always." We stood together, watching the sun rise higher, painting the forest in hues of gold and silver. The light reflected off the lake, shimmering across the water like a promise fulfilled. It was a sunrise that felt like a beginning and a conclusion all at once. A testament to endurance, courage, and the transformative power of love. Finally, I released the black feather, letting it drift onto the water. It floated serenely, silver light catching the sun's rays. It was a symbol of everything we had survived, everything we had overcome, and everything yet to come. And as it settled gently onto the surface, I felt a profound, unshakable truth. Love, once awakened, could never be silenced, never be forgotten, never be bound by fate or shadow. Hand in hand, Myron and I walked along the edge of the lake, the forest alive with whispers of joy and life. And as we moved forward, I realized that our story, though it had endured shadows, tests, and separation, had reached a place of peace and hope. The world was still vast, still full of unknowns, but together, we could face anything. The final image lingered in my mind as the story closed. The golden sunrise reflected across the lake, the black feather floating peacefully on the water, and Myron's hand warm in mine. A perfect, cinematic moment of love restored, destiny fulfilled, and hearts forever intertwined. And in that still, glowing light, I knew one thing with certainty. No one would ever forget us again.